Hey, it's Timothy, and good to be with you. Okay, so we've been talking about relationships, how important relationships are. We were created by God to have relationships and fellowship. In fact, you were created by God for the purpose of fellowship with Him. That's why you were created. You were created for fellowship, and then also you were created to take authority and rule over the animals and over the kingdom, the sea, the land. You were meant to be able to rule over that. So it's instinctively within you that you desire to have fellowship. We all desire to have fellowship. And fellowship is so vitally important to our health, mental health, and our walk. And that's what God looked at Adam and said, it's not good for him to be by himself. Now, he had all the animals. He had all these things going on in his life. I mean, he had a lot to keep him busy. He was occupied, but he was still yet evidently had a loneliness. And loneliness is just another word for hurting. Is what loneliness is. So some people can do very good by themselves, and then there's others who cannot. And that's what Paul said. Some people are gifted to be able to be by themselves, and some people aren't able to be by themselves. And because loneliness is just another word for hurting. And so a lot of times what happens when you don't have anybody to fellowship with, you become lonely. And that loneliness is, again, just a form of hurt is what it is. You're mentally hurting because of the loneliness. And so God then, that's why he put man and woman together. And that's what makes a good relationship is the fellowship with each other. Now, sometimes people can obviously be married and not have no fellowship, okay? The only time they have fellowship is when they're arguing or when they're fussing about something. And that's really not fellowship. That's division. That will end up causing you issues. And so as a result of that internally will cause something to happen to you inside. You're a spirit being. You're a spirit. You have a soul, which is your mind, and you live in a body. When this body dies, the real you is still standing there. You'll still have your soul. You'll still have the feelings. Everything will be intact. Those who had a lot of NDEs, near-death experiences, many of them, just a broad amount of people across the world have had near-death experiences, and they all say the same thing. They all talk about heaven. Some talk about hell, because when you leave this body down, you got to go somewhere. And so you're still intact. Okay, so that's you. You're a spirit being. You were created to live forever, and you have a soul. And then there is part of you that's what we would call your subconscious mind. Now, your subconscious mind has a lot of effect. Thank God for the subconscious mind, because you don't have to think about bending when things become habituated within you, ingrained in you, something becomes a habit. You've heard the form, they take 28 days to build a habit. What they're saying today is it might take 6 months to build a habit. Okay, it might take longer. It all depends how much you put your heart into it. If you really desire to do something, like people who learn languages, if they have the desire to learn a language, they learn the language, okay? Or they have a desire to get a degree, they get a degree because they have the desire. And so if you have the desire, that goes and pulls you towards those areas much, much, much faster. So, but inside of you, that subconscious mind is the part to where something becomes habituated. We say it becomes a habit in the mind. It actually becomes part of your subconscious. That's why when things happen to people's minds, they still can do different things because it's coming out of their subconscious mind. People have even dementia sometimes. They still do different things coming out of the subconscious mind. And so as a result of that, God had built this protective mechanism down inside of you, and you've heard me talk about this, is that, he built it, I think, primarily, especially women, will continue to burn themselves in relationships over and over again. And what happens is if you touch something very hot and burn yourself as a child, your subconscious kicks in and is like, don't do that again, okay? We can't get your finger near the flame again because inside of you, God built this self-protective mechanism that won't let you get around flames. Women's the only creature that I know that will just keep sticking their finger out there in relationships so can't get burned on it. And then because the reason why is because they're desiring fellowship. They want fellowship. We all want fellowship, men and women both. I've had guys, just so lonely. God, I need a good woman. And I said after a while, you just need a woman, okay? And this time you need to take care of the one that God gives you. Don't try to correct her and straighten her out, because what you find in Genesis, the 3rd chapter, there's two things there in Genesis, the 3rd chapter, verse 16. He tells the woman, "Man will rule over you." And so you take a person who's not born again, he tries that creation to where God put him in charge of since the fall, since they don't have the creation to be in charge of over again. See, all the creation used to listen to man. They still do it now in the name of Jesus. They listen to you. But during that time, after the fall, they didn't listen to him. And so as a result of that, God tells woman, listen, that authority that's placed inside of you, that instinctive drive to take charge of something, man's going to use that against you, and he will rule you the rest of the days of your life. And you take women who are, subjected to somebody who's not saved, that person then attempts to bring control over them, change the way they look, change the way they talk, change what they want to do, even the way that they think. You take different religions that are non-Christian, and I'm not going to call by names, but women are treated no more other than breeding stock, basically. They don't have much value. And even in America, up to the 1900s, women were thought maybe couldn't even learn. I mean, this is terrible. I mean, in fact, I can tell you right now, I feel women are much brighter than guys, okay? I'm not just saying that because I've been married 55 years and Donna's listening to me. So I do believe that women, some of my best managers, some of my best leaders, guys are pretty single task operated. Women can be cooking. You've heard this story. They can be stirring something on the stove with the phone, talking to their mama, holding a baby at the same time, and telling the kids in the next room, you better not go over there, okay? They're listening to everything. They can take care of 3 or 4 different things at one time. Guys are pretty single task minded, okay? And now there are some guys that can be multitasking at one time. But if you're single task, trying to do multitasking business, it doesn't work for you very well. Okay, so, and then you take somebody who's multitasking that's good at it and put them in a single task, they'll get bored and get tired of those areas. Women are really good at that. They can multitask and do those kind of areas, and so women are very bright. But then you take her and put her in a relationship with somebody who's not born again, who is not a Christian, who is a Christian but is very carnal, and hasn't renewed his mind in the things of God, then he will try to subdue her and bring her under control. I mean, you put the man in a prison cell and he'll bring a cockroach under control. He's trying to control something. And that's what God said about woman. The rest of the day of your life, you're going to be ruled by him, okay? Your desire is going to be to him, and he's going to rule you, and he's going to control. That's before we got redeemed from the curse of the law. That's before women, you get born again, and life works within those areas. And so you say, well, aren't women are supposed to be quiet and things like that? They're not supposed to be, we get into 1 Timothy, the 2nd chapter talks about women not teaching or not taking authority over men. Well, one of the things that we find is, and culturally speaking, when the King James Bible was written and some of the versions of the Bible, and I use King James all the time. The reason that I do that is because I studied and excelled in the areas of studying every single New Testament word. I have like big Kittles. It's like 10 volumes just on the Greek, and then I have all these 4-set volumes in the Bible school part of it. All the knowledge there I have that tells you how the word was used in the Hebrew. The Old Testament is Hebrew and a little bit of Chaldee. The New Testament is Greek. And it tells you how that word was used from the time it was created down through Christian and non-Christian use, and then down through the ages. Well, sometime what happened was in the King James, and culturally speaking, the King James Version of the Bible, and today we have much better resources than even people who are translating Bibles, and even when some of the religions got founded here in America in the early 1900s and late 1800s, we have better resources today. At my computer, I used to carry these books around. Donna and I'd have books in our study. We'd have books all over the house that we'd be studying something out, running the knowledge on it, all the scriptures on it. And today, with the fingertip, with my computers, with different screens, I can pop open a bunch of things at one time and look at things and have all the resources right there instead of the books. I haven't cracked those physical books in a long time. I've cracked the internet type area books and study within those areas. Well, the King James would take one Greek word, like grace, for instance, and they would translate it maybe like 10 different ways. In some places, it's translated acceptable. How did you get acceptable about that? Okay. I mean, there's like, how did they do that? Okay, why did they do that? Why did they even do that? Okay, if they would just kept the word, and it's, they'd done that, or they would take like the word love, and there's like 10 different words for love in the Greek, in the Bible, in the New Testament, and they'll translate just love. Well, if you can see what that word meant at the time, the kind of love that he's talking about, then it clears up some scriptural part of you that way. And then when they were translating the King James also, and I use the King James. I preach out the King James. I minister because I know what each Greek word is. Okay, if I look at the word power, I know it's in different areas. It's going to be dunamis or charis or whatever word I'm looking at. The agape love, whatever word I'm looking at, I know where that word is at in that setting. And so they would take the word like baptized, being baptized. Well, they didn't have a word baptized, so when they didn't translate it. What they done is they just use what they call transliteration. I'm not going to get too technical with you, but they just like they take the B from the Greek and they just translate it B. You know, baptized A, they done just A in English, and it come up with the word as a new word, baptized. And why didn't they translate it? Because the culture at that time didn't believe in submerging. They didn't believe to submerge. They didn't believe dunking you underwater. They believed in sprinkling. And because they didn't believe in submerging you in the water, they just used the word, they coined a new word, baptize, instead of submerging you in water. If they would have translated it, it meant being submerged into water or submerged into the Holy Ghost or submerged into something. But they didn't believe in being submerged. They believed in sprinkling. Well, they didn't believe that women should have authority over men. So when you read out of 1 Timothy, the 2nd chapter, where it says about women subject themselves to a man, the man that they're talking about in most places is translated husband. It's talking about you submitting to yourself to your husband. It has nothing to do about submitting yourself to anybody else in the church. And it's talking about, your fellowshipping and getting along with your husband. Even out of 1 Corinthians, the 14th chapter, talks about women taking subjection and being subjected to the authority. You have to go back with the culture and the way the King James was translated, some of that. My wife is not submitting to any man other than me. I'm her husband. I'm her head. And even then, when we read out of 1 Peter, the 3rd chapter, likewise, you husband, dwell with them according to knowledge. That doesn't mean that I rule over my wife, but, what that means is if you got a baby in a crib. Now, Lord God, I'm not getting into trouble here by saying women are babies. I'm just using that as an analogy, is that you treat the baby according to the age of the baby, or a 2-year-old or 6-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 20-year-old. You treat everybody different, or being a single person who's come out of a relationship. You treat all that different. Then that's the way you treat your wife. You don't ever make her do something that she doesn't want to do. And that's why Donna and I have gotten along for 55 years. And even before that, is because we learned to let each other just love each other and get along with each other and work with each other. And if one feels like it doesn't want to do something, we don't do it. If one of us just has to say, I don't think I want to do that, then we all stop right there. Don't go any further. And then sometimes she'll try to please me, like, no, let's go do it. No, I know. We done said we're not going to do that. Okay, so we don't do that. And that's getting along. That's called fellowship. And fellowship is based on being able to listen to somebody. And we crave fellowship. I mean, I remember being single, and I didn't like being single. Now, I'm going to tell you, I had no intention of ever being married because I didn't want to love anybody. I seen when my mother died when I was 13 years old. Lord, I'm telling you, it was unexpected death. I seen my dad up at the graveyard. It'd be thundering and lightning, and you could still hear him hollering and screaming after she was buried, with the crying and the screaming. And, as a young man, it just totally uprooted all of our lives with my mother passing away unexpectedly. And I could hear him hollering and screaming, just, uncontrollable, crying out to my mom, talking to her, and not knowing that she wasn't there. She was in heaven, okay? She had accepted Jesus about 2 years before she died, and had been baptized in water in the little Free Will Baptist church right down from the house there. Had went to a revival and got born again, and was baptized over in Pound, Virginia. I remember all that very well. And so I can remember I didn't want that kind of pain, and sometimes those kind of things can really affect you. That self-protective mechanism that God built on the inside of you is that, like the night that my mother died, it thundered and lightened all night long, or lightning and thundering all night long. And then after my mom had died and was buried, it was still thundering and lightning. And I can remember being in St. Louis, Missouri. Donna and I traveled all across the United States in some of the biggest cities and downtown Chicago, okay, listening to the Blues Brothers. Wasn't the real Blues Brothers, but you're downtown Chicago. I mean, right across from Trump Tower. Okay, you're downtown Chicago, and we were down there. And I remember we were at a hotel, and I went over to rent a car, and I usually rent a bigger car because it's safer. And there was a beautiful little old black lady, older. She said, "I'm going to do you a favor, honey. I'm going to do you a favor." She said, "I'm going to rent you a car that you'll appreciate this later." So I get out there. We get out there, and there's this little tiny car. And so I had rented a big car. And I get out there, and there's this little tiny car. I couldn't even find the door handles on the back of it, okay? And so Don and I kicked the tires a couple of times. I was aggravated about it. But then we got in that little tiny car, and we zoomed in and out of the traffic all downtown Chicago. I mean, if I'd had a big car, I would have been... I don't know what I would have had. I probably brought it back, probably with the fenders tore off of it. But this little thing, we were in and out of traffic. Boom, zam, zoom, zoom, boom. Just had a great time downtown Chicago driving around, okay? I wouldn't advise taking a big car downtown Chicago, okay? Bam, bam, all down through wherever it was. We drove it clear across state to visit some friends and minister with Michael Rabel, if he's watching tonight. We drove clear across state to go spend some time with him and minister. So I was downtown, was in St. Louis, Missouri, and it started lightning. And I'm telling you, that lightning, I'm a born again, a believer, turned on to God. I mean, I'm committed. But something inside of me went off on me, okay? And it was the lightning. The lightning was downtown St. Louis. And it had the buildings are extremely tall down there, but they're tall enough that the lightning was flashing back and forth. And you should have felt safe on the streets, but I had to get back to the hotel room. Well, that self-protective mechanism, evidently when my mother died with the lightning, associated the lightning with her death. And that's what causes phobias. That's what causes fears. So sometime in areas of relationship, if you've had a lot of pain, you don't intend on being moody. You don't intend on acting weird. You don't intend on having issues. But if you've been verbally hurt in the past in a relationship, that verbal hurt then, when somebody starts to verbally hurt you, something inside of you goes off, and really that's what controls you. Just like you don't think about, you can drive downtown Chicago and never think about hitting the brakes or turn signals. You're just doing all this naturally. That's what happens to your life. You start doing all these things and you're just being controlled by the subconscious mind in here from a natural, because it's become habituated and ingrained in you to the point that you don't have to think about doing it. You're just doing it. So when we talk about habits and we talk about something that's been habituated within you, then that's what happens to you when something bad has happened, especially with verbal abuse. Because I also, you've heard me use about where I was snake bit when I was 14 years old with a copperhead. And so as a result of that, it didn't put any poison, it put a little bit of poison, enough to where it bothered me for about 30 years. Enough that my hands swelled up a little bit, but nothing. The doctor said he put poison in you, but chose not to. It was what they call a dry bite, even though he put poison, but he didn't put a great amount of poison, evidently. And that was God protecting me. But what it did do is it caused me to have this abnormal fear of snakes, because that self-protective mechanism did not want me to have snakes. Well, I've shared with you that when somebody hurts you, you've been hurt verbally by somebody. Verbal abuse is worse, as bad as physical abuse. So when you've been verbally abused, what happens in another relationship, your subconscious picks up on those when somebody's tones are wrong. And they get into, say with me, tones. You tell somebody loves you by the right kind of tones. You don't say, "Oh, I love you." You don't say it really mean. You say it with the tones. Your tones is what people listen to. So when you're communicating, when you tell your wife you love her or your husband, you say, "I love you." You're saying it your tones. It's the way the tones are. I mean, the fluctuation in the tones can insinuate a lot, okay? So Donna and I do a lot of verbal abuse. Verbal communication, not abuse, verbal communication with our tones, okay? In other words, by the tones. But that's what tones are. So inside of you will hear those tones of somebody saying something bitter to you, and it picks up and it treats that person as a snake. It says, okay, that person's dangerous, stay away from him. And even though you're married to him, there's something inside of you. If you don't learn how to get that purged out of you by trusting God and the blood of Jesus to cleanse those past hurts out of you, you'll try to bring that into another relationship, and it will start to interfere with your being able to get along with somebody. And so if you've ever been hurt by being verbally abused, it can try to affect you in the sense when somebody's tones get wrong with you. Okay, so we all listen to tones. That's the main part about fellowship. if you're just really monotone and you're just, blah, 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 and like that, and you're not in the areas of sitting down and talking. Don and I talk all the time. We talk, get up in the morning talking, we go to bed talking, okay? We talk all the time. We drive, we talk. We go for walks, we talk, okay? So she talks more than I talk, okay? She talks maybe a lot more. I told you about, her being gone, and the boy and I went, and the boy's my dog's trying to make me talk to her, talk to him, and it's like, I'm not mom, okay, you're a good boy, okay, he's a good boy, okay. So I try to emulate what she has done with him by saying that's a good boy. Okay, so then God can change that inside of you. And sometime if you're married to somebody who's not been born again, then you might have a tougher road to haul, because again, in religions that are not born again, the men rule over the wives, and they're not much more than breeding stock. They're just it's terrible. The relationship's not there. I mean, they offer a certain amount of love, and then they draw love back and offer love and hold it back. They offer affection, and women have ADD. What do you mean by ADD? They have attention affectionate deficit. Okay, they got an attention deficit. Attention affection. They love affection, and they have a deficit of it. Okay, so. They have this desire to have affection. Well, he affects me. He calls me, he affects you because he's crazy. Okay? Crazy people can affect you because they'll cross boundaries where normal people won't cross. And so women desire and crave affection. And so to have a successful relationship, even with your children desire to have affection. If they don't have affection, then they receive, if you don't have the affection, if children don't have affection with the right tones, what they'll do is they will start to feel rejected. And when they feel rejected, they'll either do two things. They become rebellious or they become a perfectionist. And both of them are bad, okay? A perfectionist makes sure everything is correct so that they feel accepted in themselves. That's the way they turn acceptance in, is everything is perfect. Everything has to be lined up the way that they're thinking to feel good. I mean, they get up in the middle of the night, they got to go appetize their soup, okay? You get up and go to the restroom, they'll make the bed while you're gone, okay? If you get them go to the bathroom, they'll have your side of the bed made, okay? That's what a perfectionist does. Everything has to be perfect in their mind before they can go to sleep. Everything's got to be corrected with that. And a rebellious person is those that spike their hair, wear the earrings, because they confuse attention with affection, because it's getting attention, and they can confuse that with affection. And it's a very dangerous road, and that's why they run off with anybody that's crazy. I mean, you take somebody, what they've done is to get over the rejection is they turn rebellious, or they turn to perfectionists. That's how they deal with rejection. So your children will listen to your tones. Everything's about tones. You should practice listening to people's tones. You can hear the tones of hate and anger and strife and bitterness. You can hear those kind of tones anywhere. But being nice to somebody and offering a nice tone and smile to somebody, hey, how's your day going? Let your tones be soft. Don't just monotone. How you doing today? If that's all you can do, you need to do that if that's all you can do. But what you need to do is you need to practice being able to use your tones with one another. I'm telling you, it takes you a long ways in listening, because your subconscious listens to the tones. And that's what makes love. That's what love is, what makes the world go around. Are you with me on this? So having a relationship, I just want to remind you to make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you haven't been over to our YouTube channel, you need to get used to doing that, because eventually we're going to have to switch over to YouTube, because Facebook erases these after 30 days. YouTube, it'll be there for a long time. And if you don't know how to do YouTube, Google owns YouTube. So just Google the word YouTube, and it'll take you right up to YouTube. Then you go over and click on YouTube. If you subscribe to YouTube, and then they keep track of what you've done searches and keep track of those that you subscribe to. So if you subscribe to our channel, Timothy McFall, and I usually put it in the lead of Facebook. I put it on there, YouTube. So, follow it to YouTube. If you click on it once after the program is done, I go and then I put it on YouTube. And if you go to that one, it'll take you right to our YouTube channel. And you can subscribe at that point, become a subscriber. And that way, most people today are not watching television. They're not even watching on-demand television. They're watching YouTube. Most people, YouTube gets anywhere, some days, 2 billion viewers a day. There's like 2.7 billion subscribers to YouTube. It's unbelievable. We only got 7 billion people, and you got over A third of them already on YouTube. So it's amazing about the effect of YouTube, what's happening. And so it'll be there for a long time. So you can watch it all the time. You can go back and watch them over and over again. They'll be there. Some of my older ones I had done, I still have a few older ones I had done about 5 years ago, and there. Eventually I will erase those. I've erased a bunch of them. If I don't like what I've done, then I don't put it on YouTube, and I don't do that. So I just want you to subscribe if you'll do that, and leave a comment. So if you go to YouTube and subscribe, you do me a great favor. Make sure that you look at these books. I'm not trying to sell you books, but these books, this is basically the one about God Can Change Your Heart. I looked at it, and it's down there like way low on, what I mean by that is it means it's really good. The numbers, out of millions of books, they're down around 200 or 300 in their category, which is amazing, in Christian counseling, and some of those are done really good. God Can Change Your Heart is an amazing book. Change Your Life with the Power of Confession. And this book right here, if you're having trouble getting results, you need to read that, How to Change Your Life Through Living Visualization. We're working on the Holy Spirit One and Finances. We believe it'll be out by the end of the year. By the time you listen to this, it should be out. Okay, I appreciate you being with me. I want you to practice tones if you can do it. Listen to tones come out of your mouth. Your mouth. You'll say, well, I'm not sure how to do tones. Yes, you do. You know how to tell somebody you love them. I love you very much. I appreciate you very much. Those are amazing words for children. I love you. I appreciate you. You are really a bright person. You are really a good person. That you can learn it by talking to your dogs. Your dog can teach you how to use tones. Okay, thank you for being with me.